So we're going to start off by saying that this has been tested with WordPress 6.1.1 and WooCommerce 7.4.1, but it should work with any recent version of WordPress and WooCommerce. And we're not doing anything too fancy behind the scenes here. It won't work with some old versions of WooCommerce, but that would have to be pretty old now for it not to work. All the PHP for this tutorial goes into a single file, this file here. And in our case, we're going to be putting that in the custom child theme. You'll see we've got GeneratePress, which is my parent theme, 2023, which is the default WordPress fallback theme, and then wp-tutorials.tech, that's my child theme where I'm putting all my modifications in. So let's just open up my text editor, Sublime Text, and then we'll drag my child theme into here. And we'll see we've got a few files in here. The main files obviously are functions and style CSS. But we're going to add a new file. Let's go back to the tutorial and see what we need to do. Let's copy this text here. WPT product identifiers PHP. That's where our code's going to go. And let's just create a new file. And we'll save that into the child theme like that. And we'll see that's popped up on the left now. Now if we go back to the tutorial, we'll see we've got a lump of code and we need to take this code here and put it into the file we've just created. Let's copy that code, select all, paste into there, make sure that looks good. We've got the header, we've got the final closing semicolon, save all that. Now you'll see this is what we call scaffold code. So we've got the core functions in here. These are the functions that are actually going to do the work we need to do. We've got our constants defined at the top. So these are the parameters that control how it works. But the functions themselves are just placeholders. We're going to fill these in shortly. And just after each of these placeholder functions, we've got add filter here, add action here, and another action here. So this is where we're hooking, or we're going to hook, standard WooCommerce functions when we're going to do something in addition to what WooCommerce already does by itself. So we'll come back to those in just a moment. Because we've created a PHP file by itself, it's not going to do anything because we haven't told our child theme to use it. So we need to do that. So back to the tutorial, it tells us how we do that just after the scaffolding bit. So we need to open the child themes functions PHP file and add this couple of lines in here. So we'll just copy those to the clipboard. Go back to the child theme editor, go into functions PHP. Already got some stuff in here, but you can ignore all this because that's just for my child theme in particular. I'm going to inject a couple of lines here and paste what we've just copied in. So now our new WPT product identifiers PHP file is being used by the site. So what we need to do is make sure we haven't broken anything. So let's go back to the dev site here. Reload that page. Nothing's broken. We can actually double check that. I've got a log viewer down here. If something was broken, we'd see it in the website site logs here. What we need to do now is look at some products. Now we've got a bit of a basic website here, but it's a WooCommerce installation, obviously. We've got two example products in here and just some basic parameters against them. Now what we want to do is when we edit these products, we want to be able to add the various manufacturers part numbers, the MPN and the GTIN, etc. So let's edit the product and see where these are going to go. So this should already be familiar to you. We've got the general product data here. Now this tutorial currently only works with simple products. I might come back to that later and add some support for variations. But we'll stick with simple products for now. And we're going to put our new data into this empty space here. So if we go back to the tutorial, let's see how we do that. Here's what it's going to look like. To render stuff into this empty space, we're going to go into our function called render simple product unique IDs. That's these unique identifiers here. Copy this new version of the function, and we'll go back to the source code editor, back into our file, and it's the render simple product unique IDs. So we're going to replace the contents of this function here, but be careful that you don't accidentally overwrite this add action function call. So let's just select that, paste in our code. We've still got add action behind it. That's the handler function for this action hook. So whenever WooCommerce fires this action, our function is going to get called. That's going to write a little div to the output, loop through this array of product ID metadatas here, and call the standard WooCommerce function to output a text box. And then we're going to close the div at the end of it. So let's save that, go back into the back end of our WooCommerce website here, and then we'll reload the page, and we should now see our unique identifier boxes right here. So you'll see we've got some nice little tooltips here, and those tooltips have come from these little descriptions here. And we should also see, if we inspect the element, that our options are wrapped up in this little options group div. Let's just verify that's working properly as well. So let's right click and inspect one of our options here, and if we look at the container div, we'll see that it's got a little div for options group, and that contains our 3 grouped together options. So that's good. That's all the code that we need to render the text boxes. Now we just need to add the code that processes the update product function when the site editor clicks this update button here. So all we need to do for that is go to the next section of the tutorial, which gives us the code for save simple products unique IDs. So we'll copy that. Back to the source code editor, we'll find that function, which is just below here. And again, make sure you only replace the function. Don't replace this add action statement that comes after it. So now whenever WooCommerce triggers the action WooCommerce process product meta, which is triggered when somebody saves a product, our function gets called because of this link here. So let's save that. Go back to the back end of our website and put in some values. So if we say example, there we are, been here before, example GTIN 1, test I shouldn't put spaces in, I suppose, GTIN 2, example MPN 1. Let's just save those there. Now if we do an update, when the page reloads, we should have these values saved. So we can verify that by going to another product, edit product. We've got gaps in here. So we'll say, obviously these aren't valid GTINs or MPNs. Hoodie test 1, hoodie test 2, hoodie MPN. We'll update that. So those values look like they've saved, and we'll go back to the denim jacket, and we'll see we've got the denim jackets codes in there as well. That's the first step. We can now enter data into these unique identifier fields, and we can save them for simple products, and each simple product can have its own set of values. The next part of the tutorial covers how to inject these codes into what was called the product schema, or the structured product data. They're kind of the same thing, really. If we go to the tutorial here, we've got a little bit of information that tells you what the schema is. Presumably you found this tutorial because you already know what the schema is and you want to modify it. So what we're going to do is test what the schema looks like before we make the change. Then we're going to make the change, and then we're going to test the schema afterwards to make sure that when we see the codes in the schema, that we know that it's because of our code and it's not that they were there before we even started. So we're going to open the structured data testing tool, which is a standard Google tool. We'll open that in a new tab here. Because we're developing on localhost, the structured data testing tool is not going to be able to find our website. So we need to go for code snippet. We need to paste our HTML into it. Now let's do that here. So if we go to view the product in the front end. Now if we look at the page source, reload it just to make sure we're not looking at anything cached. Select everything and copy it. And then paste it into the structured data testing tools code snippet window. Run the test. This will parse over the HTML and tell us what sort of schema objects are involved in there. It's obviously found our product. It's obviously found all the stuff that WooCommerce puts in there by default. So we've got the SKU, we've got the image, we've got the price. We don't have brand. I haven't recorded the brand against this product. And we don't have MPN GTIN or any of that yet. So let's go and put that in. If we go back to the tutorial here, this is the function that adds the unique IDs to the product schema. So we're going to copy that function. Go back to the source editor and scroll down to the functions placeholder here. Again, just select that function, paste in the new code, make sure we've not modified the filter here. And then we'll see that whenever WooCommerce tries to generate structured product data, it rinses it through a filter called WooCommerce Structured Data Product. And we are now hooking into that so we can modify it. We can add things to it and take things away from it. Save those changes. And then we'll go back to our website here. Back to the source view for the denim jacket. Reload it. Select it all. And then go to new test in the structured data testing tool. Paste the new HTML into the code snippet window and run a new test. Now when we go to expand the product object, we've got GTIN, GTIN 13 and MPN, and these are the values that we've entered in the back end of our website. Now if you move all this code to production and you don't see these values coming through, these values are effectively taken from the front end of the website. The code is on this page. It's just, it doesn't render to anything, so you can't see it. But it's obviously in there because we've just copied and pasted the source code into the structured data testing tool. So this can get cached. So if you're looking at this on a website that's in production and you've got page caching enabled, you'll need to flush the page cache when you make changes to your code or if you update the product. Then when you rinse it through the structured data testing tool with a URL, it should pick it all up for you. Now, one thing we can also do here, because of how we've structured the code, you'll see we've got GTIN, GTIN 13, and MPN. Now, we've defined those up here in a global array. We can add new fields into here if we wanted to. So if we wanted to put in something else here, we could create a new constant. There's not really anything called an MPN 13, but we're just going to use it as an example here. We could put in an MPN 13 here. Label, we'll call it MPN 13. That's the label that gets shown next to the text input box in the back end. Description, manufacturer part number 13. That's what happens in the tooltip. And the schema key, this is what gets written into the schema, obviously. So if we save the changes there and go back to our products here and then edit it, we should now see we've got an additional input field called MPN 13. MPN 13. So if we grab this here, call it example MPN 2, update the product, go back to the front end because this is where the schema gets written to, view the page source, reload it just to make sure we're not looking at a cached version of the source, copy everything, Go back to the structured data testing tool, paste the source code into the code snippet box and run another test. Now you should see we've got an error here because MPN 13 is garbage. It doesn't know what that is and it's out of the specification of the schema. But it shows that we can inject stuff into the schema quite easily. So you could use this not just for GTINs and MPNs, but any other product level key value pair that you wanted to inject into the schema. It's quite easy to do just by extending that array at the top of the tutorial here. There we go. I hope that's been useful.